Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy. This is an everyday carry case from Vault Case Company, or maybe Velocal. I'm not quite sure how they want that pronounced. Anyways, a very interesting piece, and I'm glad to check one out. But first off, in the name of full disclosure, this guy was sent to me by the manufacturer. The Velocal folks reached out to me and said, hey Nick, we got this new case, so you want to check it out? Sure, why not? I've reviewed some other case kind of things in the past. Figured this would be a good chance to go ahead and do so, but nonetheless, I told him as always, I'm going to talk about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly. Might be a gem, might be junk. They still sent it along. Saw my full disclaimer on the website, though. We do have to assume, though, that these are the very best Velocal cases ever in terms of quality control, and I'm doing my best not to let this affect the nature of my review. So, there you go. Next thing, let's do some size comparison. First off, here we go. Size comparison, Spyderco. So you can see here, this is substantially bigger than your Spyderco. And by the way, I'm having a shoot in like fisheye mode, so things are going to get a little crazy over at the corners of the screens. But in practice here, we can see if I throw a standard U.S. ruler down on here, we are coming in probably around 7 inches that direction. It'd probably be better if I used the bigger ruler, right? Versus, it looks to be about a foot on this direction. And depending on the thickness, sort of depends what all is in it. But we're looking at, 3 inches, 4 inches, someplace in that domain. I'm sure they've got actual specifications that have been measured by somebody who isn't a jackass who's got a ruler, up on their website. But nonetheless, that gives you a rough idea of what we got going on here. Next thing, what is this thing anyways? This is designed to be an everyday carry case. What it's designed to do is to hold a bunch of your everyday carry items in such a way that you can very easily access them, etc. That's kind of a cool thing, right? And it's right up the alley here. And then finally, and by the way, they are at vaultcase.co. Took me a second to find their website as I was doing that. So, and considering they don't seem to be selling them elsewhere, I figured I'd do that for you. Then finally, this is going to be a quick review because it's a freaking case. And, there you go. So let's talk about what I'm liking about this guy, what I'm not liking. So on the start, I got to say, there's a surprise. You can fit a surprising amount of gear in this guy. This guy is fully sealed up now, so it's very easy to, carry, etc. Just throw, whatever. But inside of here, I've got a fair amount of stuff going on. I have, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, up there that went, 4, 5, 6 pens, 2 screwdrivers, because I was looking for things to shove into this case here. 1 Spyderco. We have ourselves an additional, looks like 5 knives, coupled with an additional 6 knives over here. This holds actually a fair amount of stuff. You can get a bunch of stuff in there, and the density of this guy is, I would venture to say, a little bit higher than sometimes what you get in like a knife roll or something like that. And so I appreciate very much the amount of stuff that you can get into one of these guys. That's a beautiful thing. Next thing, as you can see, and here's a second one, not in the fake carbon fiber finish. Here's one empty, but these little loop plates here are actually repositionable. The back side of this guy is Velcro, and the back side of these guys is Velcro. So you can actually take these guys and you can swap them around. Maybe I want a full-size loop set over here, so I just swap this out, put that in place, that in place. There we go. Now we've got a completely different configuration. Or you can take these two out entirely, and then there's a piece of Velcro that'll seal this pocket against the back there. That's nice. And so you've got these repositionable plates. You can also take this guy out if you want if you're holding something a little bit taller. That can be nice, but for the most part, and then this guy just attaches by Velcro. We'll talk about that later on. But nonetheless, you've got a bunch of different options there, and you've got these little loop plates here, for lack of a better term, are of 2 different sizes. You've got one where it's got, what's that looking like? About 1 inch. Then this has about 2 inch. Oh, no, wait, that's 1.5 inches or so. So you can kind of choose your size here. You might want to keep, if you're keeping a bunch of pens up here, you keep the small loop plates up here, etc. And then this plate here has the 2-inch size. And by the way, you can also put these guys on the back of this if you want to. If you wanted to load that central one down a little bit more. It gives you a lot of options here. So I appreciate very much that those things are both removable and repositionable. That can be very nice. Next thing is, because these little loop plates here have a, they've got some Velcro in the back, What that actually means is that if you've got something relatively flat, you can actually, here, I'll get a little file set handy, you can actually slide that behind the Velcro plate there, and that gives you, again, you can load a little bit of extra in there. This comes with that surprising density remark. Makes things pretty easy there. Next thing, you do have this mesh pocket on the back here, which is not sealed all the way along the top, but it actually does offer an opportunity to place some extra things in there, and especially something that's oddly sized and doesn't fit with a loop plate, you can definitely toss that in. Like, for instance, Spyderco Goldenstone, just toss that in the middle there. That's good. Next thing, this is a hard case. It's not a hard case per se. I mean, I can definitely bend this guy. It's not like, oh my God, but the thing is, it does have some stiffness to it. And if I was if I was carrying a bunch of pocket knives, for instance, in my luggage, and giving the TSA a shot at that, not ideal. But nonetheless, this would keep them relatively safe. It's going to prevent a lot of just your random poking and prodding, and it's going to keep things relatively well configured, which is good. It's not uncrushable, but it's definitely a little bit of a margin there. So I appreciate that. Next thing, this is actually surprisingly durable in terms of the handle and the zippers. I did a little test on this guy. I figured how much is this handle going to take? Right? And so what I did is I loaded in these plates. These are DMT, whoa there, these are DMT Dia-Sharp sharpening plates. These guys are non-freaking trivial in terms of their weight. I put 17 pounds worth of Dia-Sharp plates and other sharpening supplies into this little guy right here, zipped the whole damn thing up and carried it. And I'm going to be honest, that gave me a little bit of it was not super thrilled about the situation, but it very reliably held it. I was, really kind of tossing it around a little bit, really trying to give this stitching a go, and it actually managed it. And so I got to say, I respect that very much. Next thing, this is a portable case. I mean, at some level, that's what a lot of these cases are designed to be. These are, I've heard these referred to as like brag bags before, too, where you can throw your entire collection in a case, bring it someplace, and then you've got it handy, you've got it padded, you've got it easy to do. That's a nice thing, but there is some joy there, and having the handle on there makes this guy easy. Another use that I think a lot of folks would probably end up doing with this is you throw it in the safe, right? You put some of your pricier pieces in there, you throw this guy in the safe. That way you can pull the whole thing out, set it on your desk, grab the one you need, and that's easier, rather than having 15 things floating around, etc. So that's good. And you can also, by the way, when you take these guys out, they can be used to organize other random things as well, like cable management. These are good for, too. Like, I've used these kinds of Velcro loopy sorts of things before, and, not only are they pretty good for pocket knives with the ability to do things like this, but they're pretty good just generally speaking. They'll hold a lot of stuff, so that's good. Next thing, the price on these guys is quite solid. For they are currently sold out of this carbon fiber looking thing. But for the plain black one, you're looking here at $33. Now, look, I mean, certainly it's not the cheapest object ever made, but at the same time, you know what, that's a fine price. And considering all of the other options out there for everyday carry storage tend to be a little bit pricier, unless you're willing to go with just a good old-fashioned little brag bag sort of thing. Like this little guy. This one's from Blade HQ, where you've got all of these various slots. But mind you, the density on this guy is relatively lower, and you can put fewer things in there. These are a little bit cheaper, but at the same time, $33 for this, that's not a terrible price. And so I very much appreciate the price on this guy, and to me, all of that is the good. In that there is it's nice and portable, it is solidly priced, it's durable, surprisingly durable, and robust to weight. Got the mesh pocket, the pockets behind the loop plates, two different size of loop plates that are repositionable and removable, and you can just get a bunch of stuff in here. I'm actually pretty impressed there. On the bad side, to start with, Velocal. That's kind of a weird name, right? I mean, you'd think there'd be a U here, but whatever. I'm not judging. Next thing, there are not velocking zippers on this guy. What I mean by that is that, one might expect to have zippers that actually have the little crossover hole. Do I have anything that does that right here? I thought I did, but I don't. Either way, oh yeah, here I do. This is a Spyderco, this is a VanQuest bag. branded for Spyderco, but you can see here that this little set of zippers here has a little hole through the middle of it, and that makes it very easy to put a small padlock through there and just lock the thing down a little bit. That seems like something you might consider doing here, and if it didn't add too much cost to the zippers, it's a nice, life improvement, so to speak. Not a big deal, but it's a thing. Next thing, this is using elastic. In fact, it's leaning very heavily on elastics. It is using these little straps right here, and although the straps are so far, they seem to be pretty robust. Fact is, it's elastic. And elastic itself is it's a temporary sort of situation. So this is not something you might necessarily count on for the rest of your lifetime, but at the same time, for $30, I don't know that it needs to be. Next thing, this middle area here is, unfortunately, it's just Velcroed in. You can see there's this little piece of Velcro that engages with this one. What that means, though, is that, unfortunately, this guy can actually come loose. It takes a little bit of doing. It's not completely crazy. Like, for instance, if you lift this guy with that part unvelcroed, and it tends to re-velcro itself, it will stay in place, but at the same time, that feels a little bit cheapy. I'm going to be honest. I would have much preferred to see something like a snap closure or something like that that just feels a little bit more substantial. Even just like a loop through. Or this in the middle here, that's the cheapest feeling part of this whole thing, is this little bit of Velcro closure there. Not a big deal, but it's definitely something that's, not great. And the other thing is, frankly, there's just not that much Velcro on this anyways. There's just the one strap across the back there. And although it seems to stick fine, again, I'd like to see maybe just a little bit more effort there, although for the price, okay, I guess. Next thing, one thing to highlight about this guy is that the handle on this guy is this way. So when I grab onto this guy, it's going to hang like this. The problem with that is, look at the orientation of this little, mesh area here. That means that when you are carrying this guy, whatever's in the mesh area is going to go that direction. And so it's going to come falling out of that mesh area. Mind you, if you've got this thing full, chances are it's going to be held in position by the contents there, but that's definitely sort of backwards. I understand why they had to do it that way, because you want the mesh area to open up, but you would want the handle to be on this side. And again, I kind of get it, but that's definitely something to consider. If you're thinking about using this as an organizer, the very first time you pick this up, it's going to empty the contents of that mesh pocket into here. And so, not as big a fan of that. That could definitely skip that. Next thing, this is still a relatively constrained space for gear. I mean, there are going to be pieces of gear. There are frankly going to be just pocket knives or other kinds of things that just don't fit. Your Cold Steel Voyager, you could just toss it on the top and close it over, or throw it in the mesh pocket here, but there's really, these little mesh things aren't going to accommodate that. And so you do want to keep that in mind as you're doing that. And it's also, by the way, worth noting that although these guys are removable, one thing you cannot do is reorient them. They are not square. So as a result, you can't run things horizontally in here. You can't, for instance, install these both. I mean, you can actually. If you want to overlap them slightly, you can do something like this and then go all the way through, but then you're overlapping and you lose some capacity and whatnot. I would kind of like to see those be vertically reorientable. And then finally, on the bad side, one thing to remember is that you got to be wary of gear-on-gear contact. What I mean by that is, let's say that this side of this thing is filled up with pens or other pocket knives or something like that, and then I do this. The entire time I'm using this guy, the whatever's riding here is going to be rubbing up against what's in here, and that's, fine if it's a couple of cheapy sorts of things. But if you've got something, that's another downside of using these Velcro straps, is you got to make sure you're pulling them out the right direction. It's the BRS Evolve Eon. Actually, I believe BRS is related to Velocult in some way or another. But anyways, these guys are, it's very, very difficult to prevent that. You end up having to either put something, put another piece of something on top of these guys so it's not rubbing up. That's the downside anytime that you have things that are not oriented. Like on this side, it's fine because this part is, but you definitely want to make sure you've got something. Frankly, it would be nice to have a felt pad that Velcros on over this so that you can have just like a little buffer that stays in place on top of this guy that protects whatever's up in this area. Not a big deal, but it's a thing. And so finally, so all of that is the bad. That is, that you get some gear-in-gear contact if you're doing stuff here as well as stuff here. It's vertical only in terms of orientation of these pads. There is a relatively constrained space for gear here, especially, for looking at larger pieces. The handle on this guy is upside down and will empty this pocket out right here. I'm not a big fan of the Velcroed-in middle area here. This, to me, feels like the cheapest element. Elastic is not going to be a long-term sort of thing, and it is lacking Velocking zippers, and Velocult is a weird legitimate name. Final conclusion, look, there are a lot of approaches to storing gear out there. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you this is the only approach. Absolutely not. You know, some folks just keep things in their original boxes and whatnot. That's fine, makes sense. Some people do the toolbox thing. That's kind of my jam, right? If you watch my collection overviews, you'll see the big old toolbox. I keep stuff that isn't in the safe in. It's a beautiful thing. Some folks like the soft style knife rolls, like the one I was just showing you off here. And those can be very nice because they can, you know, but nevertheless, they've got their own set of troubles. Some like the Pelican cases, especially when you get like the nice inserts that like Nalpak Group does, Nalpak, those are an option too. But I think this is actually another really fine approach. And given the price point, this is going to be compelling to a lot of folks because you can get very good density of gear in here and you can reconfigure the plate as you need. You've got yourself the pocket here. It gives a little bit of stiffness to it. The case itself is surprisingly durable and the price on it is solid. This is an absolutely good to go sort of price. Mind you, it's dependent on the elastic. It's relying on a little bit of Velcro to do a fair amount of hard work. The handle is upside down. It's going to be limited in terms of your larger items. It's vertical only, and you do have to be careful about gear-on-gear contact, especially if you're using both this surface and this one for hard goods. But the thing is, I can see a lot of folks finding this to be a pretty good choice for their everyday carry gear. I mean, particularly if you find yourself bringing your collection with you on a regular basis or regularly pulling it in and out of the safe. The Velocal here, I mean, I can see that actually being very nice. I can see people bringing this to a meetup or something like that. I can see this working well. And so for the price, honestly, the Velocal here could have your storage needs on Veloc down. Anyways, there you go. Hope this has been interesting to you and that you have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.